From the summer of 1943, General MacArthur initiated Operation Cartwheel, was an overwatch operation for up to 13 sub-operations to secure most of the Solomons and isolate the massive Japanese base at Rabaul on New Britain. Over 250,000 Allied forces would take part. The USA, Australia, New Zealand and forces from the Netherlands. They would conduct operations. This would bring also into play the United States Navy South Pacific area under Admiral Owsley, pushing through to the Solomons towards Bougainville. MacArthur's forces would fight along the north coast of New Guinea, while US Marines' 1st Marine Division would land on Cape Gloucester on the western side of New Britain. This area had to be secured and Japanese garrisons isolated before MacArthur's big push into the Philippines in late 1944 and early 1945. I cannot cover this in detail as it was totally massive and we've got limited time, but the Allies suffered about 10,000 casualties, including about 2,000 dead, but they killed over 35,000 Japanese and left over 70,000 Japanese to starve at the garrison at Rabaul by the time this operation ended in March of 1944. There was one incident that we will cover as we have the model here today and at Tiger Hobbies. That's the incident in August 1943 when the most famous PT or patrol torpedo boat PT-109 was lost with its skipper, Lieutenant Junior Grade John F. Kennedy, performing heroics to save the remaining crew in the middle of the Japanese-held and shark-infested waters. The PT boats, or mosquito boats as they're known, played a vital role from December 1941 to about 1945, especially in the southwest Pacific area, with its vast number of small islands. These were the ideal ship or little boat to sort this out. And this was covered in the movie They Were Expendable with John Wayne, who played an officer serving under an officer based on Lieutenant John D. Buckley, who commanded Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron No. 3. Buckley, possibly with knowledge of his superiors, exaggerated some of the claims of his patrol boats, but this was to help morale at home and also attract talented recruits into the PT boat service. You can see the attraction of a fast, well-armed craft powered by massive V-12 Packard Merlins. One such keen young officer was Lieutenant Junior Grade John F. Kennedy, whose somewhat influential family pulled strings to get him into the Navy despite some health problems. Hopefully, in some cushy Washington job pushing paper. Kennedy, though, somewhat keener, joined the Naval Intelligence in October 1941 before Pearl Harbor, but with more string pulling managed to get on a PT boat course at Rhode Island. And after months of training, he took command of PT-101 in the Panama Canal until February of 1943. And again, with more string pulling, got Kennedy posted to the Southwest Pacific area in April 43 and was assigned to Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 2 and took command of PT-109, a somewhat combat-tired boat in need of a bit of TLC. Behind me is a clip from the 1965 movie PT-109 as Cliff Robertson as Kennedy at the controls of PT-109 after giving it the TLC it required. In June 1943, Kennedy was ordered to the island of Rendova, where the conditions were very poor and malaria and dysentery were on the prowl. And from here the squadron would carry out the mission in Blackett Strait. The mission was to block Japanese warships known as the Tokyo Express from running supplies to the Japanese troops on nearby islands. On the evening of the 2nd of August 1943, on a black night, PT-109 was separated from its division and was hit square on by the Japanese destroyer Amagari, I think that's what you call it, which seemed to have come out of nowhere, splitting PT-109 in two and killing 2 of its crew. After clinging to the bow of PT-109, the survivors then took 5 hours to swim to the deserted island called Plum Pudding Island, with Kennedy swimming all the time pulling an injured crewman. Plum Pudding Island had no food or water, so during the day on the 2nd, Kennedy swam 2 miles out into the passage to attract passing PT boats, but to no avail. So on the 4th, the crew, with Kennedy again pulling the injured crewman, swam another 3.5 miles to another island where they found at least fresh coconuts. On the 5th, Kennedy and Ross swam 0.5 miles to another island where they found a small canoe with food and water left by the Japanese. They paddled this back to get to their crew to give them much needed refreshment and nutrition. At this point, a local native who happened to be working with the Australian Coast Watch found Kennedy and his crew. I thought they were actually Japanese, but were, convinced by PT-109's crew that they're actually Americans. And after another few days, they were rescued by another PT boat, PT-157. There is no doubt Kennedy was from a very privileged background and pulled lots of strings to get him into the Southwest Pacific area. But his leadership of PT-109's crew in those desperate days cannot be underestimated and would no doubt go some way to help him become the 35th President of the United States. The battles in the Southwest Pacific area are often overlooked by the bigger battles in the Pacific, and the role of the Australians and the New Zealanders often overlooked. But as stated earlier in the episode, almost 20,000 Australians gave their lives in the Pacific. Also, by the end of the war, the Royal Australian Air Force grew to become the 4th largest air arm of the war, with over 6,000 aircraft, with 53 squadrons in the Pacific and 17 in Europe, and its principal fighter, the Curtiss P-40 Kitty Hawk, or Kitty as they were affectionately known by the RAAF, was perhaps the most underrated fighter of World War II. As you can see from behind me, a Kitty comes back 200 miles totally shot up with half its wing missing. That's one tough old warbird. Its range, its ruggedness, massive firepower from 650 cals, ease of maintenance in some of the most austere conditions found in New Guinea, whilst up against the odds, made the Kitty Hawk and the Royal Australian Air Force crews some of the forgotten heroes of World War II. In episode 3 of the Pacific War Part 2, we shall look at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the world's largest ever naval battle, and the landings at Leyte in the Philippines.